everyone, and welcome to Read This Now, the weekly webcast where Brad Gustafson and I share two books that we love and we think you should read. When, Brad?
I love the authority there, Jen. You should read them right now to follow your lead.
Do it. Yeah, that's
that was
right.
good.
Right now, folks. Right now. How are you, my friend?
So good. I've been reading some whoppers of books, just falling in love with books, and I can't wait to talk about one of them today.
Yay, well, do it. Get started right now. Don't leave it in suspense.
So I don't know if this is a thing or if there's a literary term for this, and if there is, I'm sure you're aware of it and you'll tell me, but the way I liken this to is kind of a book that snowballs. It's like pretty good in the beginning, and then the more you read, you're like, oh my gosh, I cannot put this thing down. Is there a word for that?
I don't know, but I love that. I love the idea of snowballing. I think that's a great way to
and don't get me wrong,
it.
it's not like it started out bad. It started out good, but the more I
just
read,
build.
I could literally couldn't put the thing down, and I wanted it to be a series. I wanted it to be a movie. I wanted to reread it. So good. So like, what did I love about this? In the beginning, and I'm going to read the first page, I guess. It starts out where the main character, as we come to know him, is in some type of futuristic jail, or at least being questioned. We don't have a lot of details. So it's an audio file of the jailhouse interview. And I don't know what jails are called in the future, so probably something different. But anyway, audio transcript file number 213.019, kind of like Stardate 213.9. The auditor, interviewer says, now then, start from the beginning. Again, for the third time, state your name for the audio file. And me, Yared. Full name, Yared, and then redacted. So for some reason, the last name was redacted. The auditor's pausing. The main character says, listen, I didn't name myself. If I did, my last name would be the Great One. One word and a number. So anyway, you can get this main character has a sense of humor, kind of witty, probably not the most popular student in a school, right? Probably beloved, but maybe gives teachers and principals a run for the money is kind of the flavor you get. And then the opening kind of story shows like him escaping this futuristic school using just genius smarts. So then like what happens and why did I fall in love with this story? Well, Yared lives with Uncle Moti, M-O-T-I, and Uncle Moti tells these grandiose tales of futuristic frontiers and warring alien nations, kind of good versus bad. And like there's the world is called the Axum or Axumites, and they have this futuristic technology that they use as a force for good in the world, like world sharing technology to help other worlds. But then they gave it to this other faction or people called the Warari, and the Warari. Sorry, I got to work on this stuff. Got to work on my alien races here. The Warari wanted to steal the technology, use it to exploit and conquer, and all these things that actually probably are pretty plausible, right? This nation that stands for good, like the Axumites. They trained and raised up these Machinitai warriors to go and try to combat and protect and get the technology back and all these incredible things. That's the tale that Uncle Moti spun, and kind of Yared's in school in this futuristic school, just kind of thinking, okay, come on, Uncle, this doesn't have much to do with the plight I'm in, the school that I'm having to endure. Or the other overlay that I also liked is it's some point in the future where augmented reality is very prevalent, and there are these huge tournaments where it's illegal, but the kids wear these glasses and they're participating in these games and seeing things that no one else can see because their glasses are overlaying the technology. Well, fast forward, or maybe I'm not going to fast forward. I'm just going to maybe pause right there, and I'll just tell you one of a zillion reasons I fell in love with this book, and I'm going to introduce you to Yared. It is the last gate of the Emperor. You'll see Yared in the middle, his nemesis / ally / nemesis next to him, his bionicle lion underneath him, who's always with this side. One of the reasons that I just love this story, it's set in futuristic Ethiopia, and it just shares like the rich culture and kind of your own voices type story of not some outsider telling Ethiopia's past present, and future, but some people who where it's near and dear to them. Also, I was in my office today talking to a kiddo, a fifth grader. He immediately notices this book and that like the main character on the cover looks like him, which isn't super common. So all of these things I was even kind of feeling as I'm reading it, I'm like, A, I love this book and I'm falling in love with it. And B, I can see a lot of our kiddos here at school falling in love with it. So I'm not going to give away like where the snowball fell or rolled, but I am just going to say absolutely epic, Jen. So for all of those reasons, you've got to read The Last Gate of the Emperor, New York Times bestselling author Kwame Mbalia and Prince Joel Makonnen, written by. So this came out early May, Jen. So good.
Woo! I love it. That sounds really, really exciting. And I love so much of fantasy is based on folklore, but so often that folklore is like the ancient Greek myths, etc., which, you know, are so fun. But I love it when we start to get fantasy that is based and rooted in folklore and mythology from other parts of the world, other continents. And when the authors are own voices authors, that is like icing on the cake. That makes it even better. So that's awesome. I love it.
So good. And I'm resisting, but I'm just going to do it. I'm going to give, it's not a spoiler, so don't worry. I'm not going to ruin the book, but I just got to say it because I'm so excited. Part of this augmented reality game, like there's the big thing with that the kids are playing underground, and Jared is one of the best players in the galaxy, by the way. But hidden in that game, and Jared does not know this in the beginning of the game, is like keys to saving the Axum Empire from the Warari. And so he doesn't realize that he's actually been training all this time. So by his forefathers, his ancestors embedded and created this game that's actually outlawed. And so you see all these other connections where usually a lot of times the games that kids are playing now, whether it's Fortnite or whatever, all the other games that they're playing, we kind of maybe tolerate them, but imagine one of those games where all the adults are like, stop playing that game, do something with your life. Well, what if that game was actually meant like, and no one knew it, the survival of the empire, right? It's just this ridiculous explosion that you don't want to end. So.
Wow, I love it. That sounds like a really action-packed. And what's really exciting to me is that the plot that you described sounds complex and rich, and yet the book you held up is not like a 700-page tome that could feel a little bit daunting for a kiddo. It looks like like the authors have done a masterful job of creating a rich and complex world in an accessible text, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it's so cool because every once in a while you forget that he's being interrogated by an auditor in like a futuristic jail, because as he's telling the story, you get so into it. And then all of a sudden, several chapters later, it's back to the interrogation and the transcript and people trying to get info out of him. It's so cool.
Will you do me a favor? That page that you read, do you mind holding it up to the camera so that I can see what that text looks like on the page? Yeah. See, that's awesome. I love seeing books that have even just parts of the text done in a creative way like that, because I think that is, again, an accessibility and entry point for some readers who might feel a little bit intimidated by a longer chapter book or a longer text. So when you can hold it up, and even if it's just some of it, I think that feels like a really accessible entry point for some readers. I love that.
Yeah, and the authors did a great job of getting us to know Jared and his unique idiosyncrasies and personality and wit in such a natural way, but really early on in the story. So then we were able to track this epic world that they created through Uncle Moti kind of telling these legendary tales. You're going to have to cut me out, Jen. I could talk about this one for a while.
That's okay. I love it. I love it. And I'm sure our 3.5 viewers do as well. I mean, that's why this show exists, so we can share our enthusiasm and excitement around books. So that's great. I'll have to add that one to my list. I have seen that cover, but I haven't read it. So I'm going to have to add that. That sounds awesome. Well, I don't know if I can even follow up that, but I really am excited about the book that I wanted to share this week. I've been hanging on to it for a little while we discuss some other things, but now I'm excited to be able to share it. It probably couldn't be more different than the book that you shared in some ways. But I also think there's some similarities in terms of the relatability that I think a lot of kiddos will see in both books. The book I want to share is called On the Hook, and it's by Francisco X. Stork. And I don't know if you can see the little byline there, but it says, how far would you go for revenge? And you can kind of see this like intense scene that's on the cover of it. And this book is about a young kid named Hector who lives with his family in a neighborhood that is frankly being terrorized by two brothers who are also drug dealers in the community. And they have a really iron fist, sort of a strict control over this neighborhood. And Hector is just lives his life trying to fly outside of their radar. He just does everything that he can to try to avoid them. But then one day, one of the brothers, Joey, shows up at Hector's job and corners him outside of the back of the grocery store where Hector works, and begins to pepper him with questions like, you think you're better than everybody else, don't you? And you think you're so smart, etc. And Hector has no idea what he's talking about. And then Joey lifts up Hector's shirt and carves a C with a knife into Hector's chest. C for coward. And he tells Hector, you don't know when it's going to happen, but I am going to kill you. And now you're going to have to live the rest of your life as the coward you are, being afraid of when that is going to happen. Okay. And this moment, Hector has no idea why this is happening to him, why Joey has singled him out. That will be revealed. But then Hector immediately pivots to, do I tell someone what has happened, or do I just live in fear? Over the next few days, several wonderful things start happening in Hector's life. For example, he is poised to become captain of the chess team at his high school. His older brother, Feely, announces that he's going to get engaged, and that he and his fiance have arranged to purchase a small house in another neighborhood away from the projects, where not only would they, but also Hector and his mom and his little sister would be able to go live in safety. And then Hector's essay that he wrote about the pursuit of happiness wins first prize in a contest, and it brings some much needed money into the family. And in the midst of all of that goodness, something terrible happens. And I don't want to say what it is because I don't want to spoil. But Hector goes from trying to avoid Joey to trying to decide whether he should reveal what Joey has done, to then having to decide whether or not he is going to continue to pursue dreams that feel sort of selfish to him, or he's going to get revenge for something that Joey has done. And the entire rest of the book, Hector is put into situations in which that revenge is within arm's reach. And as a reader, we are in peril with him about not only what the right decision is to make, but even in our own hearts, maybe knowing what that decision is, but being afraid of what Hector is going to do. One thing that I love about this book is that in the author's note in the end, the author writes about how this book is actually a reworking of his very first book from many years ago. And that his first book, after writing it, he visited some young people in a reform school in sort of a juvenile detention center, and realized that those young people were sort of the people in his book, and that he hadn't quite done them justice. And so now, all these years later, having thought about those kids over and over and over again, he wanted to write a better book for them. And so he rewrote this book, and that the product of that is On the Hook. I found it to be both, there's a mystery to it that keeps you intrigued and wanting to turn the page, but mostly I think what is really powerful about this book is how immediately drawn and connected you feel to the characters and how much you want them to be okay. And I think that's what readers will mostly connect with. It's called On the Hook, and it's by Francisco X. Stork, and I think you should read it right now.
Oh my goodness, Jen. I was sold halfway through. That was incredibly great hooks, by the way, too. 2 epic books this week.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Very different, but I think equally compelling. So that's exciting. So if our 3.5 viewers would like to know about more epic books that they can share with their readers, where can they go, Brad?
Probably a good idea. Pull out your phones or notepads. bit.ly/read_this_now. Lots of other epic books to peruse.
Woohoo! Thank you, my friend, and happy reading, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.